Welcome to our Devos. This week we started in a series called Taking Inventory, which is all about really looking at our lives as what God has called us to be, which is managers. And this week I want to talk to you about how to think like a manager. We talked about the manager mindset over the weekend, but this week I want to kind of dive a little deeper into what that might look like, because it really is a lot different than what the prescriptions of the world offer concerning how we ought to be. And so the first major change that needs to be adopted into this mindset, if we believe that everything is the Lord's and that we are stewards of the things that He has given us, then the first thing we need to realize is when it comes to success, faithfulness is the measure of success. Faithfulness is the measure of success. I can't overstate that enough, because we see a lot of times, I was talking to a Christian leader just today, and he had built a business that was like over $50 million in a couple years. And he told me that he was, for the most of his adult life, he was just driven. And every single time he would be into what he was doing, he would just go overboard. And he'd skip sleeping, and he'd go away a lot and try to get the deal and try to work for companies and try to do all this stuff. And he said, I went almost all of my adult life being driven. And this part of my life, I want to make it where I'm spending my life being led and being faithful. And so what we often will say when we are looking at being stewards is we go, well, if I'm not like a multimillionaire, I'm not a faithful steward. Or if I'm not the one that gets that promotion, I'm not being a faithful steward. If my church doesn't have stadium seating with a rock wall and baptisms that also double as float spas, and I have all this luxury, then I'm not successful. But that's not how successfulness when it comes to management from God's perspective is measured. It's not measured based on outcomes. It's not measured based on things you can't control. It's measured in terms of your faithfulness with the resources that you've been given. This has been something that I've been working out in my heart lately that's really transformed my appreciation for things that the Lord has done in my life. If you can grasp this, it's pretty revolutionary. So look at what Paul says about this, and then see if you can find the parallel in your own life. And he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 through 2, he says, this is how one should regard us as servants of Christ and stewards, there's that word, managers of the mystery of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. Now, he's talking, of course, the mysteries of God is the gospel, the preaching of Christ crucified, these mysteries, these spiritual profound truths. What we as Christian leaders will often say is, well, because we're faithful, that means we have to build this massive ministry, and that means that we're faithful. That doesn't mean that necessarily. I'm not saying that's wrong, but we oftentimes use a metric that God is not telling us to use. And when that happens, we find ourselves immensely discouraged when we don't get that goal met. When in reality, God wants to know if you're faithful. He wants to know if you're honoring Him with what He's given you. He wants to know that if you're working wholeheartedly as if unto Him. He wants to know that if you're managing your finances the way that as if the money is His and you're trying to do the best thing with it. He wants to know if you're managing your health. Not that you're going to be on the cover of a swimsuit magazine or you're going to be, modeling. That's not it. He wants you to be wise when it comes to what you put in your body and what you put in your life and how you ingest things. Not that you have to be the most influential person online, but He wants you to be able to nurture that if you're going to say something that it's spoken with in kindness and gentleness the way that He would, it's faithfulness. So once you change that metric, it opens up a world for you to start to redefine what success looks like. Because as a manager of God's resources, success looks completely different than what the world says it is.